We're well and truly into meteorological spring, but this week it's going to feel a little bit more like winter. But why is this? How long is it going to last? And does it have anything to do with sudden stratospheric warming? Hello there, welcome to this week's Deep Dive. My name's Honor Criswick and I'm a meteorologist and presenter here at the Met Office. Now I've got a treat for you today. We're also going to be taking a look at some global weather. We're going to be taking a look at tropical cyclones, including Tropical Cyclone Alfred, which has affected eastern parts of Australia. And to do this, I've got a special guest in Julian, who has been on Deep Dives before. Come on over, Julian. I don't have to hide him away anymore. Hello and welcome to this week's Deep Dive. So we're going to be talking about tropical cyclones. So to start us off, could you just give us a brief overview of what tropical cyclones are and how they're impacted by La Niña?
Well, a tropical cyclone is an area of low pressure which forms in the tropical oceans primarily. And actually, this is a good place to start. This is a global map showing kind of several decades worth of tropical cyclone tracks. So basically, they're storms which derive their energy from the warm ocean surface in the tropics. So you can see they all kind of form in this zone either side of the equator. And these show the tracks which show they do actually move out in the direction of the poles eventually, but they're primarily driven by this high sea surface temperature around the tropical zones around the globe.
Okay, lovely. And what we've seen recently, haven't we, is that we've had a few more tropical cyclones this season, particularly in the Indian Ocean. Is that right?
Yes, yes, that's right. Actually, if we go back to that, I'll just show the Southern Hemisphere season, because actually it's nice to talk about the Southern Hemisphere season for a change. Actually, often when I come on here, I'm talking about the Atlantic in our summer. But this time of year, from November through to April, we get tropical cyclones in the Southern Hemisphere, and you can see the tracks here. There's not so many in the Southern Hemisphere as there is in the Northern Hemisphere. And we have these zones where we don't get many, like in the eastern Pacific Ocean in the South Atlantic. That's primarily due to things like cold ocean currents and not enough organised bands of storm activity to cause it. But we do get them in this part of the southwestern Pacific around Australia and the South Indian Ocean. And as we were just saying, this season in the South Indian Ocean in particular, it's been very active. We've had a large number of storms in that area and some which have caused some impacts. And of course, just recently we've had a few more around Australia as well, which I think we'll go on to talk about.
Yes, so a bit of a link with sea surface temperatures?
Yes, there is. If we look at the sea surface temperatures, firstly, this is the Pacific zone. And the thing which jumps out, firstly, I should explain that the colours represent anomalies, so they're differences from normal. And so the brighter colours, yellows and reds, are where the sea surface temperature is higher than normal, and the blues are below normal. And this blue zone along the equator tells us that we are in a La Niña situation, although actually we're starting to transition out of it because we're getting this zone of slightly warmer ocean closer to South America. Means that we might be kind of coming out of it. We don't know yet. It might carry on, it might not. But we've had a La Niña for some time. And that does have an impact on the Southern Hemisphere tropical cyclone activity. So it tends to mean that we get less activity in this part of the South Pacific, but in the South Indian Ocean, we can get more activity. And actually, if we go to the sea surface temperature map for the Indian Ocean, you can see how warm it's been anyway in that region. And that is one of the reasons why we've had an active season in the South Indian Ocean, is that we've had these see the orange and yellow colours showing that the sea temperatures have been quite a bit above normal. This map was from late February, but it's been much the same throughout the whole of the season. In particular, this area around Western Australia, we've had some damaging cyclones in that area, one of which came ashore some weeks ago. So that kind of sets the scene for the fact that we've had this higher activity in the South Indian Ocean. I think you can see that from the track map as well that we've got down here. So actually, this shows the South Pacific Ocean. I'll have to orientate you here. This is the coast of Australia.
Yes, that's Alfred there.
So these are the tracks of the storms we've had so far this season. And actually, there's not many. And the three main ones we've had are Alfred, Cyru, and Ray, all which occurred during 1 week towards the end of February. But apart from that, not much at all. But if we switch across to the South Indian Ocean, you can see this huge proliferation of tracks. So we've had these over near Australia, We had Zelia, which was a very intense storm which hit Australia. We've had some long-lived storms as well, which stayed out over the ocean. So we've had Talia and Vince. And then over the western part of the basin, we've had a lot of storms in this region, some of which have made landfall over Mozambique, Malawi, earlier in the season. And another one, Garance, which hit La Réunion, which is the French island there. So we've had a lot of activity. And this kind of culminated in a period in late February where we had multiple storms active at the same time across the whole southern hemisphere.
Yes, I think we've got something to show that as well. So we had, what was it, 5, almost 6? It wasn't quite 6, was it?
This satellite picture was from late February, and although we've labelled all the different storms on here, if we can orientate ourselves again, here's Africa, here's Australia. So we had Honda and Garance near Madagascar, Bianca near Western Australia, Alfred across near Eastern Australia, and then across in the South Pacific, Cyru. Ray at this time was just about going through the transition into what we call an extratropical system, so it was losing its tropical characteristics. So that wasn't technically a tropical cyclone at the time that Garance formed. So actually there were 5 tropical cyclones active simultaneously in the southern hemisphere. And that equals the record for the number of simultaneous tropical cyclones in the southern hemisphere, which is 5. And the last time we had that was back in 1992. So it shows what an active period it is. So as I said, that's because we've had a generally active South Indian Ocean. South Pacific wasn't particularly active, but we just had this one period where there was what we call a South Pacific convergence zone really developed, which is a zone of disturbed weather through this part of the ocean. And we had these 3 spun up quickly, but they were almost the only 3 that we've had all season in that region. So that's why we had this particularly active moment, if you like, in the Southern Hemisphere season.
Wow, really interesting. And this image actually illustrates it really nicely. I love that you can see them all on the same satellite image. So let's focus a bit more on Alfred then, because a little bit unusual for this part in Australia. Taking a look at the track, it's almost like it changed its mind and had its eye on Brisbane, excuse the pun.
Yes,
Did you want to talk a bit more about that?
Well, you can see where it formed. So it formed up here in the northern part of the basin, the Coral Sea. And the storms which develop in this area, we do get them fairly frequently. And a lot of them do tend to either move in towards, make landfall over northern Queensland, so the zone down from Cairns through Townsville, Mackay, that sort of area. Or sometimes, if the steering currents are different, they might just run parallel to the coast, keep out over sea, or maybe come down parallel to the coast here and weaken as they do. But in this case, Alfred, the reds here show when it was at its peak in terms of its intensity, and then it weakened as it came further south, but then hit an area where the steering currents, which is the kind of upper air which determines which direction storms go in, became very weak, and then it kind of reversed, and we had this movement in towards the Brisbane area, a Brisbane kind of Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast area, and making landfall there. Now I have to say, it came ashore as a relatively weak tropical storm. So for many other parts of the tropics, a landfall of a tropical storm of that intensity wouldn't have been very noteworthy. But of course, this is a really populous area, and also they're not very used to getting tropical storms. I think we can see that from the kind of map of the kind of history of storms hitting that region.
Oh yes, here.
So this is a real zoom in towards Brisbane, Gold Coast area, and looking at all the storms in the historical record which have passed through that zone. The green lines are of storms of tropical storm strength, so not particularly strong, but this is all the storms that have ever done that, and there's not many, and the ones that do tend to come down from the north. And there's only really one in the historical record which came in from the east, and that was this one here, Cyclone Dora, in 1971. So you can see how infrequent it is for them to get this kind of storm. So it hit Brisbane, and there's kind of 2 impacts it had. There was a lot of rain.
Yes.
I think we can see that from the rainfall map, can't we?
We can, yes. Where did I pop that? It's hidden behind this one. Here we go.
So this is the rainfall map over Australia for the last week. And you see the purple colours here around southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales. And the purple colours mean they had 300-400 millimetres plus of rain in just a few days. So that caused some flooding inland, some of the river basins in that region. But the other thing is, because the storm was coming in from the east, and fairly slowly there was a constant wave pounding action along that part of the coast. And that part of the coast has some lovely stretches of sandy beaches,
it's what they're known for,
which generally tend to slope gently down to the sea.
Yeah.
But the pictures that we've seen from that area since the storm hit are remarkable. You get the beach, and it's gently moving out to sea, and then you get a new kind of cliff edge of 2 or 3 metres, where the sand has just been completely eroded from the beach area. So there's now these new cliffs, if you like, all along the seafront there, where there used to be kind of gently sloping sandy beaches.
Yeah, some quite sad images actually. I'm sure many of our audience have seen quite a lot across social media and the news of these beaches basically disappeared as a result of this storm. So quite an unusual event for this part of Australia. Anything else you want to talk about, Alfred?
I think that's about it for Alfred, yes. I mean, we're coming up to date now with what's happening at the moment.
So it's largely weakened now, that storm.
It's moved inland and it's weakened, and there is some remnant rainfall, but most of the effects have gone now. Okay.
So another tropical cyclone that we're just going to briefly talk about is Jude, affecting more kind of Mozambique.
Yes, that's right. We have, the only storms active now at the moment, we have 2 more in the South Indian Ocean. I was saying that we've had a very active season there, and it's continuing. Yeah. So we've got these 2 storms there. The first one, Ivone, probably won't cause any problems. It's fairly weak. It's sitting out in the central part of the South Indian Ocean. And this is the current forecast from the regional forecast agency there. And they're predicting that it'll gently drift southwards, so shouldn't bother any land areas. But we've got Jude, which is over near the coast of Africa. And in fact, it started up here and tracked across the north of Madagascar, reached the equivalent of hurricane strength before it made landfall over Mozambique. It's now inland near Malawi, and it's weakened right down to tropical depression, so the winds aren't very strong at all now, which is typically what happens with a tropical cyclone. It loses its source of moisture and energy as it moves inland, so the winds die down, but there's still a lot of remnant rainfall from that storm, or depression as it is now, producing a lot of heavy rain in northern Mozambique and in Malawi, and we expect that to cause some flooding. There could be 300 or 400 millimetres of rain in that zone. But the thing you'll notice as well from the forecast chart is that it's not just going to move inland and dissipate, but we expect it to turn back out to sea, and so probably by Thursday it'll be back out over the Mozambique Channel, and once it comes back out over the warm ocean surface, it's got the potential to re-strengthen, probably not to as strong as it was previously because it won't have the time, because it's going to cross the Mozambique Channel. It'll bring some heavy rain to southern Madagascar, and then we expect it to move out over the open ocean and will probably dissipate at some point in the future there. So there's still more impacts likely to come from Jude, both from rainfall over Mozambique, Malawi, and also it's going to move back out across Madagascar as well.
And was it the 3rd one of the season? For this area?
To hit Mozambique, yes, we had 2 earlier in the season. We had Chido, which was a little bit further north. In fact, that you can see it marked on the map here. Mayotte. There's a French island called Mayotte there, and in December, Cyclone Chido, very strong cyclone, hit Mayotte, and there was some real severe damage and devastation in that island because it had a direct hit. And there was another one a little bit later called Dikaledi, which moved across here and across Madagascar, just grazed the coast and then moved back out again, a little bit like Jude is doing. So, all in all, it's been a busy season in the southern hemisphere. And I say we're in March, so it's quite possible there could be more in the remainder of the season. Typically, the season lasts from November to April, but it's not unheard of to get storms in this season as late as May or even early June, so there could be more to come.
Okay, well, we'll have to get back on if there's any more exciting ones. I think it's really interesting as well, 2 storms that we've kind of focused on today, more kind of impacts from rainfall rather than strong winds. I think people always think of tropical cyclone storms, strong winds, heavy rain, but actually in both these cases it was more kind of the rain that was causing
it's often the case that inland flooding can be one of the biggest impacts from tropical cyclones any part of the world, actually, rather than the wind, although often we hear about the wind because you can see the impacts of it very clearly when it makes a landfall.
Okay, lovely. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's about it.
That
Yeah,
was
we've
about
brought
it.
everything up to date.
We
so,
have, yeah,
that's
that was a
where we
really
are
good
at this
summary.
current moment.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Julian. That was super, super interesting. I've been looking forward to this chat all day. But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, obviously I'm sure we've seen quite a lot on social media about particularly Tropical Storm Alfred. So it was really great to have a bit of an understanding as to why and what occurred. But now we're going to move on to UK weather and figure out why it has been so cold. So now let's bring it back to some UK weather. Now you might have noticed already today that it's felt a little bit cooler, particularly if you compare it to the weekend where we had lots of sunshine and it really felt warm in that sunshine too. We just about made it to a rounded 20 degrees, so nice warm spring sunshine, but feeling a little bit chillier today, and I'm afraid to say through the rest of the week it's going to get even colder. Temperatures are slightly below average, I suppose, but what's really making it chilly is the brisk north to northeasterly winds. So where are they coming from? What's the reason for this change? Well, it's all thanks to this area of high pressure just to the southwest of Iceland. Now this area of high pressure eventually actually bringing us something a bit drier as we head towards the weekend. But before we take a look at that, I'm just going to add on the kind of the air mass temperature. So you can see already this northerly flow. If we follow these isobars down, we can see that northerly flow across the country bringing in that colder air, all thanks to this area of high pressure, turning the winds kind of clockwise. And if we zoom out, we can see actually these winds kind of already originating all the way up from the Arctic Sea, so bringing in some really quite cold air across parts of the UK and some brisk winds at times, which is really adding on to the wind chill through the course of the week, particularly if you find yourself in any exposed spots around North Sea coast. But through the week, even if you're away from those areas, it is going to be feeling chilly. Now, as we head through the evening, if I just play this through, we can see this frontal feature moving its way, or the centre of it, I suppose, moving its way southwards down through the North Sea, bringing in this cold front. And what we'll find behind this cold front is actually a lowering of the freezing level, but along the front itself, bringing in a bit more cloud, perhaps some light outbreaks of rain, but there's going to be plenty of showers through the course of the week as a result of this kind of northeasterly flow of air. And you notice we still find ourselves in that kind of cold plume all through the coming days, so still Thursday and into Friday. But keeping your eye on that area of high pressure as we head into Saturday and also Sunday, it's kind of shifted its way eastwards. So by the time we reach Saturday and Sunday, if you get a bit sick of the showers towards the end of the week, that high pressure is going to build with the centre of it across the country. So that's going to ease away any showers, largely kill them off. So Saturday and Sunday actually look like quite decent days. Probably going to see quite a lot of blue skies around. Still going to be cold though, some frosty, possibly icy starts. Notice we're still in that colder plume of air for Saturday and also Sunday as well. So still on the chilly side, but if you're not a fan of the rain, then the weekend does look a lot drier. But earlier in the week, what does this kind of northeasterly flow of air mean for the weather? Showers, showers and more showers. Sunshine and showers. You're going to be sick of us saying that by the time we reach the end of the week. All through the week, you can see all the way through to Friday, there's a risk of sunshine and showers. Now, some of us are going to see more showers than others. Obviously, with our winds coming from a north to northeasterly directions, that means the bulk of the showers are going to be across northeastern areas, North Sea coasts, East Anglia, even some feeding through into parts of the southeast, Sussex and Kent, for example. But even still, some showers moving inland at times. So a little bit drier in the west. Yes, west is best this week, but it's not necessarily going to be completely dry. There's still a chance of those showers and that brisk flow being moved into western areas. But you can see at times, particularly on Wednesday, for example, Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland, probably once again seeing quite a decent day, but still, as I say, on the chilly side. And then as we reach into the weekend, we can see a gradual decline in those showers. There are still some about, can't totally rule out the odd shower or two, but for most it's going to be a dry day, a few more blue skies around, but still feeling cold. So focusing on the showers, you might have seen already, we've mentioned a risk of some sleet and snow. So I want to just show you the the freezing level, so the temperature at which, if any the height at which, sorry, if any precipitation falls through, that's where we're going to see any precipitation largely fall asleep, possibly snow. Now we can see on Tuesday, where we're starting, freezing level largely between 400, 800 metres. But notice as I move through into this evening, tomorrow morning, we can see a lowering of that freezing level. Remember that cold front shifting its way southwards? Behind that, we're seeing our 0 degree isotherm lower. And obviously plenty of showers moving specifically into these areas. So it's likely we probably are going to see some snow. Mainly high ground, the Scottish Highlands, the Pennines, the North York Moors, for example, likely to see some snow across hills, higher ground. But as we see this freezing level lower, possibly even seeing some snow flurries to lower levels too. Is it going to be impactful snow? Probably not. Most of it melting away as the sun comes up during the course of the morning. But the main risk is going to be ice for the first part of the morning. Obviously plenty of showers, that's going to make quite a lot of surfaces quite wet, particularly across higher ground. That's probably where the main ice risk is going to be. So a chance of some slippery surfaces during the morning through the course of the week. So keep an eye out for warnings, a low risk we could see some ice warnings. And obviously just take care if you're out and about during the early morning. And where we see any clear skies overnight, it's likely that we're going to see some frosty conditions too. But through the course of the week, anywhere we see those sort of grey colours, so where the kind of freezing levels dropping to around 200 metres, that's definitely where we see those showers move through. There is a risk possibly of seeing some snow to lower levels as we head through into tomorrow morning, but nothing impactful. But yes, snow on the cards, so doesn't really feel like spring weather, does it? Now the question is the cold snap anything to do with sudden stratospheric warming, or the SSW for short? Well, it has been confirmed that the stratosphere polar vortex has collapsed. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, well, this is when the winds in the mid-stratosphere change from westerly to easterly. But what does that actually mean for the weather? Usually about 70% of SSW events lead to colder weather in places like Northern Europe and the UK with easterly winds. The forecast is showing hints of this happening, so there's a higher than normal chance of a cold snap, but later in the month. But not every SSW event leads to extreme weather, so we'll have to wait and see if that one plays out. But we'll get more details on how this could affect the weather as it gets closer. But the polar vortex actually collapses every couple of years during midwinter, so it's not something that happens all the time. But the current cold weather is not directly related to this, so just in case there were any questions around that. So not directly linked this week to the SSW, but something we're keeping an eye on for later on as we head into March. Speaking of later on into March, shall we see if this cold spell is going to stick around? So what we can kind of see, here's a stacked kind of probability chart of whether we're going to see more high pressure dominating some more of these reds, oranges and yellow colours, or if we're going to see more low pressure dominating some more of the blue colours. And this is the timeline along the bottom here, so moving further into March. So we can see mainly red colours to start. That's where we're under the influence of that high pressure moving its way eastwards towards the UK, moving its way in from the southwest of Iceland. But notice how we get into the middle of March, further into March, see a few more of these bluer colours. So an indication that perhaps some kind of low pressure is going to start to dominate. And what we're going to see is that high pressure obviously shifting its way towards the country over the weekend, but then it continues to move its way eastwards into parts of Europe. And that kind of sets us up into something we're a bit more familiar with. So for example, as we see that high pressure drift its way more towards Europe, that allows a bit more of a low pressure setup to set up into the Atlantic. So that means, notice a change in our wind direction. So rather than a cold north-northeasterly, we're going to see something a little bit milder start to move in from the northwest. So this is for the end of next week, so Friday the 21st of March, a kind of idea of what potentially the weather could look like. And notice the temperatures returning a bit more towards average, perhaps slightly milder. So it looks like it's going to be quite a brief cold spell for now, mainly this week, and as we head into next week, something a bit milder coming along. But as we know, milder doesn't always mean better. If we're getting more of a wind flow from the west, southwest, that means a chance of some frontal systems coming in, more cloud, possibly some outbreaks of rain, mainly for the west, perhaps slightly drier towards eastern areas at times. So a change is on its way if you're not a fan of the cold and you want spring to return, but it might just mean that there's a return of some more cloud and of some more rain. So it depends what you like more, I suppose. But that's pretty much it for UK weather. It doesn't seem quite as exciting as what we've spoken to Julian about towards Australia and other parts of the world. Another big thanks to Julian for joining me today. I really enjoyed that chat about tropical cyclones, and I hope you did too. Let us know in the comments if you did enjoy it, and if you have any further questions, drop them in the comments as well. I always do try and take a look at the comments in my deep dives, because of course we'll have our weather studio live on Friday at 12:15, so I can try and answer some of them then. It will be me and Alex Burke-Hill. And if you haven't had enough of our content already, we do actually have a new video on our YouTube channel around climate change. It's a really good video that I was able to take part of. We've got an experiment, I got to wear a lab coat. It's really, really interesting, so make sure you go check that out as well and give it a like while you're there. And obviously give this video a like if you enjoyed it too. But yeah, I hope you have a great week. I hope you don't mind the cold so much, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye bye.